The Night of the 12th is a French murder thriller written and directed by Dominic Mole that calls itself a work of fiction based on true events. The film begins with a title that explains that every year 20% of French murder cases remain unresolved. The murder we focus on in the movie occurs early when Clara is set ablaze by a mystery assailant. The group of investigative detectives charged with solving it are led by new Captain Johan, who's played by Bastien Buel. And although it isn't necessarily focused on in the movie, it's not something that they talk about, at least early on. You can't help but notice that they're all male and they all bring their biases shaped by personal reflections to the case. For example, at one stage we hear the experienced detective Marceau, who's going through a divorce that he struggles to detach from the case, observe that women always get burned, Joan of Arc, witches, etc. And again, it's just kind of that throwaway line that kind of points us to the direction, and it brings back the, well, why aren't those 20% of movies solved, and kind of gets into the weeds of it all. And it's kind of that well-intentioned tone deafness that echoes throughout. It's not that this crew are incompetent or uncaring, but their sheer maleness causes them to struggle to get a feel for or how to navigate the case's nuances. For example, we see early on how they completely botch breaking the news to Clara's family, or also as well how they're kind of obsessed with her sex life, and to the point that one friend of hers who's kind of giving them details around this breaks down and is just like, look, this doesn't matter, it's not actually relevant, you're kind of focusing on this in a way that implies that it's actually her fault for decisions she made, where she's entitled to make them. And that's kind of the running theme here. Captain Johan begins to become transfixed by the case, and we regularly cut to him cycling in the velodrome with the obvious metaphor of he's going around in circles, in the way that kind of this case and these discussions tend to do so. Again, we were just talking about God's creatures, focusing on a very similar sentiment. The Night of the 12th never sensationalizes the murder, though. Instead, it gets into the weeds and it gets into the everyday human conversation. So it isn't kind of your typical murder detective movie, although if you do enjoy that, you will enjoy this as well. But what it really gets into is kind of it's interested in the biases that I spoke of. It's interested in kind of gender representation, but it's also doing it without lecturing or looking to offend or insult men either. It's not the kind of movie you'll have men coming away from going, not all men or anything like that. Now, I'm sure obviously there's a few nutcases out there who probably still will, but they'll come away from any movie saying that. It's not that type of lecturing movie, or not the kind of thing where it's trying to make you feel guilty or responsible or like your hand is on the wheel for just being a man here. And what I liked about this is that in a way where I just spoke of God's creatures not really understanding how to tackle this issue, the Night of the 12th boat has its heart in the right place and is asking the right questions effectively, ironically by showing how the people involved and people investigating these kind of cases often don't ask the right questions. It's a really timely movie with a really timely subject matter, because we're kind of dealing with that. Now, again, this is, male on female violence. It's not a new scenario. It's not something, but it's something that we're dealing with a lot of high profile cases that are causing us to ask questions and re-examine how we feel about these, both over here in Ireland, but also in the UK, where there's kind of a police involvement as well. So like I said, this comes, even though it's a French production and even though it kind of focuses on the French side of things, it is a really timely kind of global subject. Overall, The Night of the 12th is a really simple but effective watch that really gets itself bogged down in the minutiae of the issues it's tackling, but in doing so is able to kind of parse it in a way that I haven't seen stories kind of be able to do so. Again, God's Creatures is a direct comparison. Where that's not able to do so, this is, and it's because it just gets down to the everyday simple conversations that we all have and challenges us in that way, if not confrontationally. It's an excellent watch and I can't recommend it enough.